nobody like this. You ain't seen nobody like this. You hear my sound all over town singing. Whoa. You ain't seen nobody like this. You ain't seen nobody like this. You hear my sound all over town singing. Whoa. I think there's something in the water. If you wanna take a sip, but be careful what you wish for. The faint of heart can't handle it. Everybody wants a piece of someone else's prize, but it ain't free, it don't come cheap. Only the strongest will survive. You ain't seen nobody like this. You ain't seen nobody like this. You hear my sound all over town singing.
Good evening and welcome to San Antonio Soccer Roundtable. It's been a while since we've had to announce that one here. Rafa, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing well. Doing well here. It's a little chilly, so you know what that tells me? Number one, HEB's got chili meat. Number two, it's high school soccer season because in Texas, that's how we roll. And where are you at today here? A little early to be catching some high school soccer, but where are we at?
I'm live here from Waco, Texas. I've been here since yesterday, and I'll be here there till probably mid-morning. Then I'll be heading on to Round Rock the afternoon, and I'll be there till Friday. And that'll probably be my last recruitment trip for the year. I'll be probably doing some local schools, and then I'll probably be hitting the road again probably towards late January.
So it is that time. There is some soccer that has kicked off on the TAPS side here. With TAPS early season, kind of hard to get consistent results here. But we do have some here. We'll start with the boys here. Anything here. Central Catholic 1-1, Antonian 2-3, TMI 1-3, and the two Austin schools, one's 2-1, one 1-0-1. We'll talk about Central Catholic here in a little bit here for that here because that's going to be an interesting story here. Team that I'm looking out for, San Antonio Christian. Lions off on the boys' side, 4-0, 2-0 through there, and then very limited information from the others. For the Division 2 and then Division 3 for the boys, no information for that for District 5. District 6, JP2, the Guardians 2-2, and New Braunfels Christian Academy 0-1. Moving over to the ladies real quick here for the girls. TMI 4-1, St. Michael's 3-1 up in Austin. Antonian 4-1 Incarnate Word, 4-0 Incarnate Word, 2-1-1. St. Dominic Savio 1-2, but obviously very very early. San Antonio Christians on the girls' side struggling at 1-3. St. Mary's Hall 0-3. St. Anthony 1-2. On the season, and Geneva 1-2-1. A team that I'm looking out for, JP2, the ladies 2-1. San Marcos Academy 1-2. Historically, they've been a pretty solid team. Holy Cross 0-2. And New Braunfels Christian, another one of those teams you got to look out for, 2-1 for that here. So early on, anything that stands out to you as far as standings? I know it's extremely early, for that here, and obviously limited action so far as being able to really say anything.
Just like I said, just early non-district games for them, just kind of getting their feet wet. I'm sure we'll get to the bulk of some of the TAPS play closer, really this month. As far as I think part of district play comes into right now, and then they'll have their little break in between when they play some of the UIL teams, and then they'll get back to finishing off like towards the end of January, finishing their district, then going into their their playoffs around mid February and so forth. And I know how they try to cram everything in try to, for those games and so forth. But like I said, it's gonna be interesting how these teams retool. You have your usual favorites. Like I said, you have your Central Catholics. Like I said, you have your GP2s. From the girls' side, Geneva. Like I said, they've all had some pretty good success in the playoffs. Some have won state titles, and like I said, that's the unique thing about private school soccer here in San Antonio. We've had some great programs
Mm-hmm.
and great state champions. So you always have one that's gonna stand out again. We'll find out who's the one that's gonna really kind of make some noise this year.
Yeah. So, and typically where tap soccer really becomes interesting is first, number one, they play, I think, up to Christmas break. So you'll probably start seeing some district matches within the next couple of weeks for that here. And then more importantly, start of January when UIL starts, you'll see them commingle in the showcases, early tournaments, depending on what they're called for that here. I know, Jay will play a tap school in the Northside tournament, I believe it is, that they'll play a Northside school, or so that should be interesting to see how they intermingle. And I know Central Catholic has a couple of big matches with 6A schools to get ready for the playoffs and stuff like that here. So it'll be something to kind of keep a lookout for. Once we start getting more information uploaded to the TAPS, and TAPS is kind of like 4A soccer down in the valley, hit and miss on teams updating their information, whether it's Max Preps or the TAPS website. You'd think that, going through the TAPS website, where you'd think that they would update the results, but it is what it is for that here. But we have a new section here that I'm hoping that we'll do on a weekly basis, or maybe every other week, and especially when we get closer to bigger matches for that here, or matches for that here. It's called the San Antonio Soccer Roundtable Bullseye List. Um, for me, how I interpret it, and Rafa has his version, I have mine, and we'll see how it kind of goes. But to me, it's going to be things that either it's teams or maybe games, especially once we get in season, that we want to highlight and maybe talk about specifically in the San Antonio, or maybe even still a little bit from Coach Cano's 50-50 podcast, maybe some big state matches that maybe don't impact our area per se, but could impact stateside overall. That we should be highlighting for that here. Especially I know, Rafa, you travel around quite a bit. You know a lot about local rivalries, local derbies within Texas high school soccer. Obviously we focus in the San Antonio area, but if there's down in the valley, Laredo, Brownsville, RGV area, I know Edson used to tell me that there are some very heated, friendly games that put San Antonio soccer, as far as like attendance, to shame.
You need to go to a Brownsville game. I remember going to. I'm really good friends with coach. One of the coaches from Brownsville, Pace, Coach Jimenez. I remember meeting. It was at a regional fund. I was with him and went to go see him play. I think they played Pace, and it was Pace versus Porter, I believe, and the fans were the most rowdiest. They were even cussing at the refs and putting them down, and the coaches. Was like, I asked Coach Jimenez, is this it? Usually every time down there? I said, yeah, it's basically a rivalry game. I mean, they fill out the stands. I think they even filled out Sam's Stadium, which is a big stadium there, the football stadium there. So they have playoff games down there. They'll fill up the stands kind of like the football game. So yeah, it's a very
And
intense rivalry.
I heard it's and this is no offense to San Antonio soccer crowds, but we tend to be very sit, watch, cheer a little bit, maybe yell if there's uh, a physical play, I guess you could say, for that here. But from my understanding down there, just from the people that I've spoke with, It's, there's a lot of sound, there's a lot of cheering throughout the matches, along those lines here, and and cheer, I know you'll stand by this here. We want to make sure that we're supporting the referees and stuff. So if you are commenting, and especially they have new rules this year, according to the J head coach, that if the referee determines that fans or individuals are being offensive, it could cost teams directly this year. So keep that in mind when you go to the games, whether it's whether it's club or obviously high school. We obviously focus more on the high school side. When it comes to referees, there is a referee shortage. The referees out there, some of them maybe experienced, but there may be some that are young. Let's try not to detour the young ones by being a little bit too vocal. We will say, we'll just put that message out, and then keep that going throughout the year. But Rafa, let's get into yours. Yours is up first, and then I'll explain mine. And if you want to go into a little bit detail of why you selected this or what prompted the ideas, besides my wish list of what the Bullseye List will be going forward.
Yeah, so I came up with this. This is the Bullseye's list. This is, for me, I feel the teams that have a big target on their back, especially for some of the things that they've done, not only last year, but you know, as far as establishing their programs and so forth. So we're gonna start, like I said, in no particular order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like I said, so we'll start with Central Catholic. And very story program. They got the job done last year, um, winning the state championship, because, like I said, they had been runner-ups the last 2 years. But so they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna have a big target on their back coming this year into TAPS. But
they've got 2 targets though.
Yeah. The controversy, I think, if you haven't heard, there's some issues with some player issues. That something occurred, during
hazing incident.
The hazing incident, and that led to some things. I'm not going to get into any of it, but like I said, I know they're dealing with it as far as the consequences, and we still haven't heard anything yet, the results from it, and
which is not surprising because there's legal action in place. So.
Yeah, because there is a case involved right now, and like I said, we haven't gotten too much details on that, but those, for me, is, like I said, that distraction, and also them winning the state title, it really does put a bullseye on them. And it's like I said, and for a team, trying to maybe repeat, it's going to be, like I said, they have a lot of things on their shoulders. And like I said, they're going to be targeted for this. And I'm not saying from the bad side things, that's more as far as the soccer thing. Teams are going to be gunning for them. Like I said, last year I had them as my number one as far as RPIs, because like I said, they got the job done. They got the state title. This year, it's kind of, like I said, the unknown. We don't know what's if anything's changed or anything like that. Their coaching changes, this and that. It's kind of been kind of tight lid. But going into the season, especially in the TAPS, they're gonna have a big target on their back. Trying to repeat as a state champion. So like I said, they got some key games coming up, and like I said, so we'll see how they respond. I know they had a lot like that. We'll see how many of those players that are left over coming into this season, how they respond to all this.
Yeah, for me, Central Catholic, the pedigree is there, but the lawsuit, the fallout from the lawsuit, because from my understanding, there has been some roster turnover for that here. The coaching, I don't know if that's still resolved or obviously they're playing, but I don't know if you've heard if there was a coaching change, not a coaching change. Along those lines here, it's been pretty kind of hush hush for it here. But the pedigree, Central Catholic has always historically been a deep team, so I don't see that much of a drop off for them. But I do think hello FTC De Santon and Roberto Dos
So
Santos, Rafa's best friend, uh, Club America. How are they doing?
they got robbed by the refs
Oh,
again.
did they? Are they out or just that was
They're
their
out.
first
Yeah,
leg?
they basically got robbed in the first game and the second game too. Like,
So we won't talk about that. Yeah. So your next team, Southwest, one of our big fans, Chief, huge supporter of them, and like friend of the show and all around great guy. Um, what's your thoughts on Southwest?
yeah, Southwest. Like I said, last year was the dream season. Um, the expectations, like I said, they set the bar high, and they just fell a game short. And how do they rebound from that? How do you keep yourself hungry? This and that. Because and like I said, Coach Monroe coaches them well. I think they'll bounce back from that. They are going to have, like I said, I think a bigger target on their back because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's going into the season. How is that pressure of just falling one game short? How is that going to affect the players' mindset? Are they going to be mentally prepared for it? Sometimes teams do have hangover. Having regular success one season and they kind of fall a little short the next season. How are they going to deal with that if that happens and so forth? But like I said, it's a fairly talented squad. I don't think they'll be the favorite for their district play. There'll be some teams that are going to challenge them. Like I said, there was one team that did beat them last year, which was their sister school, which was Legacy. But you have other teams that can probably push them to the limit, maybe even more prepared now that they've seen what they have. Um, and then the pre-district seasons, I know, how are they going to prepare? I know I've seen who they're playing against in scrimmages, which is great. But those are scrimmages. Scrimmages are more like it's like I said, those are dress rehearsals. You're trying to see what and I've like mentioned in 50/50 podcasts, like your scrimmages are not playoff games. They're just there to see, okay,
Well, they're not even regular season
yeah,
games
just see
either.
games. Yeah, so they're there more. What can you do? What can my players do? What can't they do? What rosters work? What form? What's going to be how deep we are as far as in the bench, as far as player rotation, this and that. It's more like I said. Even when I coach, it was more we had experiment on those games because we didn't care about the results. What we cared once we got to start of the season, yeah, that's what it mattered, especially into district play. But it's good for them. Yeah, they're preparing. They're setting the bar high. They're playing playoff caliber teams to get them prepared, going to the into the non-district season, and then into the to the district season, and then how are these going into the playoffs? How are all these other teams where they face? How prepared are they going to be there for them? Because I know that one game I went to against Piper, there was a little adversity there that they had for a little bit, but hey, they overcome that, and that just shows the character of the team and those players. They find a way to win, and that's a tale of like a championship team. How is I going to react to it if that happens again? It's the experience that they have. So, and they know when they get to the last four, the level of play is going to be a lot different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you saw what Walnut Grove. Like I said, it was back and forth. Um, I know there was some controversy on play. I know they want to bring the VAR, and that's something we discussed it on 50/50. Maybe they should have it. I think NHS has the money to do it, but we'll see. But I think, like I said, I expect big things for them. It's the things. Can they repeat the same performance as far as and get to the final? or is it the pressure a little too high much for them? But I think they're, like I said, they're well prepared, and like I said, they're going to have that target. But like I said, I expect good things for them.
Reagan?
Reagan's, like I said, I'm hearing the buzz about them. Like I said, they had a good season last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then how do they build upon this? The thing with this with Reagan, you know, the first round games they're playing against, now they're playing against the Northside schools, and pretty much they've kind of, not say dominated, but like I said, it's a really good matches there. It's the second game that's been kind of the Achilles heel for a lot of our 6A, the Austin area schools. When they run into Dripping Springs or a Lake Travis or a Westlake or Round Rock or McNeil, is this the team, that's going to break that and break through and finally be the, we have a team from 6A from San Antonio that's going to represent us in the Final Four or in the final there at Georgetown. And like I said, I think Reagan has a great opportunity this year. Like I said, they had a good foundation last year. They had a great run. Can they break through? And I'm sure Coach Rowell is going to have them prepared for this season. So and like I said, I think they're going to be the favorite for district wise. But like I said, it's that second round game. Can they get over that? And then if they can get over that, we'll say, could be there. It's been a while since we have a 6A team make it to Georgetown, and like I said, I think they have a good shot for that.
Let's talk about Livonia.
So Livonia, like I said, they made some noise last year. Like I said, I got an opportunity to see them play. They had a great run in the playoffs.
All the way to the regional semis where they lost 3-2 to Progresso.
Yeah, which they actually, with that game, they were up on that game, and they just kind of, I think they faltered a little bit, but then the controversy came the following week with Progresso forfeiting against Salado. Should have had that been, Livonia playing against Salado, and maybe Livonia ends up going to the Final Four or to the finals, and but you can what I can say about Livonia is that they've built a really great program, and we'll see how much as far as graduations that hit the players. But like I said, for their district, like I said, this should be the favorite to win. And we'll see how they. One of the things that I like to see how if they can test themselves early on a non-district play. I think that'll help them, prepare more into the playoffs. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they see a Progresso or they see a Valley View or Hidalgo, and a matchup with them. So, and you want to be at playing already teams at that caliber or seeing that kind of speed when you get to that point, so that way you're prepared for. And like I said, I think Livonia has a good shot to represent Region 4 for 4A.
We'll see about that here. I have a team on mine that might like to say something different. And then Harlan from the north side.
Harlan's been, I think, one of the staples here in San Antonio. Very successful program. They've not had some deep runs the last few years. We'll see how they do this year. Like I said, that Northside district is just getting better and better each year. Like I said, last year they had some adversity, but a couple of surprise losses. But like I said, they were able to kind of, like I said, bounce back and and make the run. Like I said, last in the playoffs, and
they lost to Johnson in the first round.
Yeah,
that's the tough thing about the north side schools is they're placing the northeast schools and right now. So
yeah, and that's the thing that's going to be key there. Can they get over the hump on that? Because in the past, they used to take the other route where they would go through the Laredo schools, the Valley, and then finally meet up with one of the Northeast or the Austin area schools in the third round. I think they have the tools to do that. Kind of this little same situation like Reagan. If they can get that, once they get that first round win, that second round game is going to be the key for them. If they can get by one of those Austin area schools, like I said, they have a good shot also. I think those are probably your two that could probably represent Region 4 as far as for 6A.
And then, hold on one second. I didn't take it off here. And then for me, on my list, let me pull up my notes here because I'm not as well educated as Mr. Rafa here. I went with TAPS, San Antonio Christian. They are a team that historically does very well on the boys' side. However, and if you listen to bracketology for the last 5-6 years, one of Rafa's main themes is don't go against teams from Brownsville, and even in TAPS, San Antonio Christian. I think they did beat them in the regular season
Yeah,
in the
I
first
think
match.
they split.
But when it came to the game that mattered, St. Joe's Academy Brownsville won in the playoffs and ended up, I want to say, going to the final.
Yeah, and they
didn't
lost in
win
the
it.
final. Yeah.
But for San Antonio Christian, can they get past? Because they're going to make the playoffs, for it here. And whether it's first or second between them and Brownsville, I think most likely, they'll finish in one of those two spots. But based on how the TAPS does their brackets, assuming they don't get upset and Brownsville doesn't get upset, or St. Joe's Academy doesn't get upset, they will meet deep in the playoffs for the opportunity to go to the Final Four? I think just like UIL. So your thoughts on San Antonio Christian and my list of highlighting them, putting them under the bullseye?
Yeah, they've been a really good program. I know Central Catholic kind of gets a lot of the accolades and shine because of TAPS, but this is not. They're also a great program. They've gone some deep runs. They just, like I said, fall short, a game short or 2 games short, and getting to the final, to the finals. And like I said, them versus Brownsville St. Joseph's, they always had some good games in between them. And I know this last year, St. Mary's Hall was kind of thrown in the mix too because they were that little thorn on the side for both teams. And but we'll see what they do this year. Like I said, we'll see if graduations is hit San Antonio Christian and can they build upon one last year, dominate the district, and finally get over the hump and win the TAPS title there in Round Rock.
Second team, John Jay. Reason why I put a bullseye on: number one, my son's playing for them. He gets to play varsity for them because he had transferred from schools, and last year he had to play JV. But the reason why I picked them on the list here, and I've already kind of talked a little trash to Chief, I do think Jay is a sleeper to get past Southwest in that district. And that's not discounting Legacy and Harlan. Was it Harlingen
Harlandale,
or
Harlandale,
Harlandale?
Southside.
Those two will be very, very competitive, I think, as well. But Jay is very heavy senior team. Most of its offensive scoring is back, if not all of it. The defense, so they're going to retool a little bit on the back line and the defensive midfield where AJ plays. But to me, for Jay, this is one of those years where in high schools where it's kind of that perfect storm where you've had teams that have kind of grew up together, and this is their senior year. This is their last shot. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of depth underneath because there are some quality juniors and sophomores. But I think for Jay, if they're going to go far in the playoffs or they're going to contend against Southwest and Harlandale and Legacy, this is the year for them to do it. I know Coach Poor is looking forward to the team this year. And I think you plan on going out and seeing one of the scrimmages through here. I know AJ mentions that they get Reagan twice. One is a preseason friendly, and then I think they play them in one of the showcases. So
Swenson Valley.
Yeah, AJ's looking forward to getting tested through there here. So, so for me, obviously, I'm going to pick my son's team to highlight here as far as for a bullseye. But I also expect Jay to, just because senior teams in high school that have played well, especially if you've returned a lot of your offensive players from the year before, that to me gives a huge advantage. Now they've still got some work to do, to be able to compete directly with Southwest. But I think if for Jay, I think this is that year to, if they're going to step up and prove it, this is the year where they really build that foundation. Any thoughts on John Jay? I know you haven't seen a lot of them, but any thoughts on Jay?
Well, Jays, in the past they've had some really good teams, and I remember when they were in 6A, and I know Coach Porter's done a great job there. Really kind of building this team. And I know we were at some of those games last year, and they lost some close ones. Some really close ones, which kind of if they win those, they make the playoffs. And it's and you mentioned to me, like I said, a lot of had to do with experience. A lot of mental. There were some mental mistakes that kind of cost them
Some
those.
silly fouls, yeah.
So yeah, cost them those games. But I think Coach Porter's kind of gotten that group together. I think they're focused, ready to go, and that chemistry is going to really challenge a lot of these teams. And like I said, this is like I mentioned, this because John Chay's not a team to sleep on, and I think they have a really good opportunity here to really kind of make some noise and really kind of be a thorn on the side of that district. Maybe throw a little monkey wrench. You never know.
I don't
Because
think Southwest is going to coast, and I don't no
no.
disrespect to the previous teams that have played.
Mm-hmm.
I think the talent in the Southwest or in this district has gotten much
Yeah.
better, and this district is much deeper. And if Southwest or Jay or Harlandale or Legacy does make a run, that's a good sign for them making a run deep in the playoffs here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that district's really kind of closed the gap as far as talent wise. It's gone a lot better, especially what Legacy did last year. Harlendale, like I said, they had a good squad too, and keep an eye on also on Southside. I know we also forgot about MacArthur too.
yes, MacArthur.
MacArthur. So it's a pretty stacked district. That's and you can't sleep on anybody because they can come back and get you. And so it's one of those kind of hidden jewel districts that if you have a chance to see some of those games, you definitely need to check them out.
And I will say, I know the team isn't very good, and sorry, Matt, but if you get the opportunity to go down to see South Sands Stadium, they have a great Veterans Memorial, at the football field, and like I said, to me, it's worth making the trip down there, just to go and see what they've built down there. My other team, probably a little bit different than through here, and that's SanAntonio Cole. Uh, you mentioned last year that they're a team to kind of watch out for because they had a little bit of history, which in their first year in UIL, they finished second in district. I think they won a match and then lost in the area round.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they are in the division with Lavernia. So, it'll still take a huge step up to be able to compete directly with Lavernia. But they are a team where I'm interested to kind of see if they can go a little bit further this year, if they can compete maybe a little bit more directly and give, I'm not saying Lavernia didn't have some, tough matches, but if memory serves me right, Lavernia did class that division or that district, pardon me. So to me, I put Cole on here, for my 4A school, right? Yeah, my 4A school to kind of look out for. Your thoughts on SanAntonio Cole and year two?
So with Cole, you can say with them, it was a very successful season. For being the first time in UIL, like I said, they've played before in the past. They were played as a club team, but still played against other high schools. So they've already had a base. Was a program that was starting from scratch. So they had some wheels under, going into this season. So that helped a bit. They got a playoff win. Believe they beat Pleasanton in the playoffs, but then they ran into a buzzsaw, which was Austin Achieve, which
Yes, they
ended
did.
up winning the state
8-0.
title.
Yeah.
And how do they learn from that? Like I said, because there's a possibility they may see them again because because they're Division II schools because they're both small enrollment. I mean, how do you build upon? Because I said I did get to see them play last year. They have some speed and they have some good size. Um, Technical play, like I said, we'll see how better their technical play is. If they can improve on that, um, I think Livonia could be really challenged by them, and also, but you also have like other teams like Memorial and Kennedy
Mm-hmm.
too in that district. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of makes things difficult as well, and also that Gonzalez team too. So,
Mm-hmm. So, yep.
so it's
Yep.
it's a little tough district for that, and for that 4A. Um, but I think Cole, like I said, if they have the kind of their nucleus again this year, that I can see them doing a lot major more improve their prove that as far as their maybe their play. They're going to maybe contend into the district title. But the keys for them is do they run into that to Austin Achieve again, which I'm sure they're going to be probably loaded
Right.
again this coming year, and do they learn from what they learn from that? Can they challenge them and maybe able to knock them off?
The next team here I have is Piper. They went undefeated in District 26. They lost to Southwest in the area, which was round 2 in a very competitive game. Um, to me, the thing with Piper, I think because they were in D1 last year, if they were in D2 and not in the Southwest district, because Southwest will be D1, just with the number of kids that they have, compared to the rest of the teams in the district. Piper to me is a team that if they have to face Southwest, because I think Southwest is still probably the favorite to, win the district for that here. But if you're happen to face Southwest Piper in an area match where if you go down to if depending on where they finish in the season, if they're D2, depending on who finish, because I think there's 3 other teams I think that we figured that
Mm-hmm.
could possibly finish higher, or finish in the top 4 because it's not necessarily higher, but in the top 4 to where if it drops them down to D2, because remember the ladies were in D2, the boys were in D1 last year, just on how everything settled out. So to me, Piper's one that. Of course, we don't know what they have returning, but they are a relatively young school, so you figure that and just be honest with you, up in that Smithson Valley Piper area, they tend to put out some quality teams. So to me, Piper is one on the boys' side, and that I have on here as far as a team to look out for.
Piper kind of got some little bad luck last year because with New Braunfels not making the playoffs, that kind of bumped in into Division One. Had New Braunfels made the playoffs, Piper would have been in Division Two, and that's the key. Yeah, in that district, you have 5 teams that it's a very competitive district. Like I said, you have Swenson Valley, you said Piper's your district champ, and you have New Braunfels. They also have a good squad. Then you have the Bernie High. Bernie High, even though moving up from 4A to 5A, they made some noise last year, and can't count them out. And like I said, also you have the Bernie champion. Traditionally, they've been the kind of, like I said, they had some struggles in the last couple of years. They've been starting to bounce back. So, and then you throw in the mix maybe like a Kerrville Tivy. Like I said, keep an eye on them. They could be a surprise team. It's like I said, it causes a lot of chaos on where exactly you could end up, and it's like, and that's the thing we talked about last year. This past season is, where are you going to end up? Could you end up in D1, D2, and I think you said it best that had they been in D2, I think honestly, I think Piper could have really ran the table, maybe even made it to the regional final. But like I said, it wasn't meant to be. But it was. I was at that game, and they actually did have the lead versus Southwest, and just a couple little miscues here and there just kind of changed the momentum of that game. And who knows, had they maybe kind of survived, a little bit, maybe the story would have been different. Yeah. So, but like I said, they're gonna be a great team to watch. We don't know. I'm not sure how much they lost as far as graduation, but knowing the talent they have there, like I say, especially with their JVs, and they're going to be ready to go for this season.
And then my final one, I put Warren because Warren did win the league, when District 28 last year. But really, I'm putting the bullseye on the entire District 28. And I know you focused on Harlan, and we already kind of touched based on this. But to me, can they get past the District 27 schools, the Northeast schools? Last year, they played 4 matches. District 27 won 3 out of the 4. and the one that they won that District 28 one was an upset where it was O'Connor. Who did they beat? They were Connor was what, D1, right?
I believe so.
Johnson 27, 28. No, so Johnson beat Warren. And I think they were, and then Reagan beat Brennan, and Reagan dominated Brennan. So yeah, they were actually District 2, Division 2. That's Quadrant 3. Beat Brandeis, which was an upset 2-1 on there. And I'm not saying that through there, but just Brandeis I think had a better record, and I don't think many people were picking O'Connor to upset the team, because they did finish fourth in District 28. So to me, that's why I have Warren, and really it's District 28, because being on the north side, playing the Northeast schools, and especially where District 28 used to be able to play the Valley schools, and that's why I think that's why Harlan went deep a few years and back to back prior to last year, because they were playing the Valley schools from Laredo and Brownsville and stuff at the 6A level, and then meeting the Austin and Northeast schools late. In the area or the regional semis,
the quarterfinal. Yep.
At that point, where now they're facing them in the
first round.
What is it? By-district round, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, by-district round.
The by-district round. So to me, like I said here, and since we're San Antonio one, to me that's really kind of the big focus between the two biggest districts, the Northeast and the north side. To see, can the north side schools get a little bit more redemption on the Northeast schools in this upcoming season? Your thoughts on really D28 versus D27, and like I said here with Warren, Warren historically has been a very quality team, well coached. I know AJ has about 5 or 6 of his club teammates that are on there, so I'm real familiar with them, and I think they'll be it's hard to predict District 28 just because there are a lot of quality schools, quality teams in there. But I do think Warren will be in the top 4 once again this year for the men's or for the boys side.
Other teams going to kind of keep a lookout for is Brennan. Keep an eye on Brennan. Brennan's going to be a team that can surprise them. They're very competitive, well coached. Soto's kind of been on the brink. They're kind of on the cusp. Do they take that next step and get into the playoffs? One of the other teams we kind of had high hopes and was because we saw them 2 years ago play was Taft. Taft was,
but they got killed with injuries last year, right?
Yeah, injuries and a couple clubs that didn't want to allow them their players to play. No names mentioned there, but because I was actually looking forward to seeing them play this past year, and I thought they were going to be the team that kind of really challenge some teams because they were very talented. But I think I said, and that's the key thing is staying healthy is going to be a key for I think all the teams we've kind of discussed. Is if you can stay healthy, it's going to help you in the long run. Keeps grades up, and but here, like I said, I think Northside's might probably overdue to kind of get some little payback on some of the Northeast teams. But they always, and plus, like I said, they have a couple of their sister schools. Like you have Brandeis, Clark, over there in that district, with the Northeast teams. Like I said, kudos to O'Connor and Coach Bledsoe on that big win over Brandeis. Brandeis, like I said, last year, they were on the roll until they kind of fell apart a little bit in the end, and then that really kind of derailed them, and O'Connor kind of finished them off there, just kind of, and so kudos, like I said, kudos to Coach Bledsoe with O'Connor, what they did last year, and I think they'll be ready to go again this year. Like I said, I've coached in that district. It's basically a playoff game. It's not a district game; it's a playoff game each week.
There's a few teams at the bottom that you can breathe a little against, but if you don't bring your A games, you
Mhm.
can get.
Yeah,
They may not get the victory, but they'll
they'll
sneak
make
out
you
that
warn it.
tie.
Yeah,
They'll sneak out that tie, which ends up can make you, instead of winning the district, you end up finish second or third,
or
and
out of the
that's the
playoffs.
sneaky thing. Yeah, we're out of the playoffs.
Yeah,
Depending on that.
like one of those sneaky teams is Holmes. You
Yes.
know, Holmes has kind of been one of those teams that if you don't show up, they're gonna make you. They'll make you pay. They'll come out with with an upset or their draw. So that's the thing with this. You can't fall asleep in that district because that one little let up could cost, like I mentioned, can cost you the district title or the playoff spot.
So before we transition to the ladies here, let's. So moving over to the bullseye for the girls, Rafa. We'll start out with Smithson Valley, who is I guess not number one, but listed first on your list.
Yeah, so Swenson Valley, like I said, they'll have another target again this year in that crazy district. Uh, like I said, every year, we talk about district,
District of Death.
the district of death. Like I said, the group of death, District 26 5A. Um, you know, this last year, like I said, they were able to, you know, kind of get off that little monkey because remember the year before they basically that district got swept by 25 5A. This year they're a little kind of little change of things, and they were able to, some of them got some wins, some weren't. But like I said, Cincinnati Valley was able to go really deep, into, like I said, into the playoffs, and like I said, they ended up going the the regional to the actually the state semifinals, which are the lost to eventual state champion A&M Consolidated. So the great season for them. How do they do a repeat performance this year? Like I said, that's why they have that. They're going to have the bullseye on them. But like I said, they're going to have to. Like I said, they're going to have to hold off teams. Like I said, the Bernie girls really surprised team last year, and then you have Bernie Champion, you have the Piper girls. I know they had a coaching change this year, but they're still going to be up. Really, really well coached. You also have New Braunfels, Alamo Heights, and we're a little surprised Alamo Heights didn't make it this year. So, and then like I said, it's a like I said, it's that district really kind of gets you prepared, and like I said, that I think they're prepared a lot for Cincinnati Valley to go into to the run they made, and hopefully, like I said, they'll be able to kind of get through and finally get to the state final and win one, for San Antonio.
Yeah, Smithson Valley is, whether it's football, soccer. I think they do pretty well in basketball as well, if
I
memory
think
serves me
baseball
correct
too.
here, and baseball. They put out some quality teams, whether it's boys or girls. Next up, Davenport, the Lady Wolves.
So Davenport, like I said, great season this past year. Um, they got to the final. It's just lost a tough one with the 4-time defending state champ Salina, and Salina's kind of had a stranglehold um, on that title, and I'm sure everyone's waiting for realignment for for
Well,
2020.
Salina has a new coach too, right?
Yeah, they'd have a new coach. He's moving over for the boys to the girls, but yeah, they're not going to miss a beat. Like I said, if you watched the 50-50 podcast last week for the
Mhm.
2 episodes, we discussed. I mean, Coach Conn discussed that. I honestly think they're going to end up winning the fifth one. I just don't.
The
Maybe
talent. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe Life Waxahachie may have a little say in, or Frisco Panther Creek. They always play them tough. So, but credit to do with Davenport. Remember they were kind of like the bridesmaid a couple years ago to Bernie. then Burnie they left because of realignment, and finally they like I said, they had a dogfight last year with Wimberley. They were back and forth. That district still remained tough. Also you had also a tough Fredericksburg team. You had a sneaky good Canyon Lake team that they can upset you when you least expect it. And it's like I said, that district really kind of prepared a lot of things. Like I said, we had two teams in that district make the state finals. They both were runner ups. Like I said, Wimberley ended up losing to Canyon Randall, but I expect good things again for Davenport. Um, I think it's between them, Wimberley, um, also Canyon Lake. It's going to be like a 3-team fight for that district. But I think for there in Division One, I think they should have no problem getting
No
going.
Marble Falls.
Marble Falls might be that fourth. I think it's going to be between them and maybe even Fredericksburg. Yeah. But as far as district, playoff wise, I think maybe the one challenge, a couple of challengers could probably be maybe Cal Allen, maybe Burnett. I know Burnett just had a coaching change, so we'll see what happens with them as far as if they do meet up in the playoffs. But like I said, I think Davenport should have no issues as far as getting back to the state Final Four. But as far as district wise, they're going to be in a dogfight with, like I said, with Canyon Lake and also with Wimberley.
Yeah. O'Connor, the Lady Panthers.
Yeah, O'Connor, like I said, I think I have some high hopes for them this coming year. I think they're well coached, and I think in that district, I know the last few years it's been dominated, like I said, by Taft, and even last year we didn't think Taft, they had lots of graduations, but they found a way and they surprised everybody, and like I said, this year, like I said, I think O'Connor takes the front runner on that district. But like if you remember the last few years, it's been the O'Connor, Taft, Brennan show. Those three kind of cancel each other here and there, and that kind of determined who won the district title. But I think this year, O'Connor is going to have the bullseye on them as far as winning district. I know Taft's probably kind of maybe rebuilding a bit because they lost probably the best keeper.
A lot of talent, yeah.
A lot of talent, but the best keeper.
The keeper, yeah.
Madeline, like I said, and then Brandon, we'll see. I know they kind of fell short last year. Can they bounce back? I think they'll be fine. And then you have Warren. Warren surprised the girls surprised some teams. I know me and Steve, Coach Sanchez, we discussed and we actually want to see them play, and they have a really good midfield. And then you have other contenders too. You have Sotomayor. They had it's a good run last year. Can the Harlan girls bounce back? Like I said, what can he do this year? So like I said, that district's going to be tough. But like I said, I'm gonna just as far as the bullseye, I'm putting O'Connor on there.
And then Lavernia, 2 times, both the boys and the girls made Rafa's Bullseye List. So obviously, if you get an opportunity, go check out Lavernia, both the boys and girls. I think their district does the varsities together, right? I know AJ's district has them where they.
No, I think they do them separate because I've
separate
gone.
As well?
Yeah, they do separate as well. Great season for the Lavernia girls, well coached, and I, they had some great wins. They knocked off a very heavy favored Burnett team. That kind of bust us through their district. They kind of manhandled them, and then they made a statement. In the next round, knocking off that really good Cal Allen team, and then they just fell short against Davenport. Like I said, I was at that game, very competitive game. It was back and forth. It could have gone either way. Just kind of unlucky for Lavernia, but like I said, Davenport able to kind of pull away. But no shame on what the Lady Bears did last year, and I think they're going to do another repeat performance against this year. Could we see another Lavernia Davenport rematch in the playoffs? That's a possibility. That's probably another great game that especially if they do play each other, definitely go check that one out. So like I said, they'll have their target in their back. I don't see it really anyone challenging them in their district. Maybe the Gonzalez girls might like it's kind of little, give them little little fits here and there, but like I said, they should have another great season. We'll be well prepared and looking forward to see what they do. They building upon what they did last year.
And I'll say this: we talked about you mentioned that they upset two teams. They didn't just upset them.
Yeah, they
They
blew
beat
them out.
Burnout 5-1, and then they
Mm-hmm.
followed up against Cal Allen 4-1 after beating, I think it's Somerset in the first round, which was kind of
Mm-hmm.
expected.
Yeah.
So they didn't just 2-1 or win in PKs. They dominated those matches. Now they ran into a tough Davenport and ended up losing 4-0 in the regional finals for that year.
Yes.
But so they had a deep and quality run to where, depending on who's returning, you could see a rematch between Lavernia and Davenport on the ladies' side for 4A D1. I'm assuming both would be D1, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this should be D1.
D1 Lavernia, yeah, they'll be D1 because everybody else, Kennedy is the only other bigger school than them in District 27. So to me, you know, I don't think people realize just how dominant Lavernia was last year. And they just ran into that buzzsaw, from Davenport for their here. And your last team, 6A Johnson, the Lady Jaguars.
Yeah, so Lady Jaguars, like I said, they've been a staple for their district the last few years, year in year out. Last year they got a big win versus a really tough Lady Warriors teams from Warren, and then they lose a heartbreaker to Lake Travis in PK in PK penalty kicks. Um, had they won that game, honestly, could have, they could have maybe made a run all the way to that regional. I think they would have made the regional final and really given Vista Ridge a run for their run for their money, and maybe like I said, it was like I said, it was a great game for them, season for them. How they built upon about that this year. Let's see. I'm trying to get something real quick here.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that wrong. Okay, no.
I
So
thought I,
they
I
took
thought
care
I
of Warren.
distracted you getting
Yeah,
my little
yeah.
puffed up
Yeah,
energy
so
drink.
so they took care of Warren last year 3-0 in the playoffs, and then they lost. Like I said, they didn't lose the show. They lost on a heartbreaker to 1-0 to Leander to Ron Rock, which that's one of the favorites in this region. To kind of take them to the brink on their. Literally they could have made it to the. I think had they gone past Ron Rock, they could have I think made it to the regional finals and met up with Lake Travis. So I think I have high expectations for them again. They don't rebuild, they reload. Um, the keys for them is can they get past that second round game? The Achilles heel for our San Antonio 6A girls teams have been the Austin teams. You know,
It's
Round
not
Rock,
just. I'll
yeah,
get to
and
it
for the
on
boys,
mine.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not. It's
Well,
not
for the
just.
girl, for the girl side, it's been like the Round Rock, the Lake Travis, the West Lakes, the Dripping Springs. So, but I think Johnson has a really good chance. I think they can get by that second round game, and I think they can make some noise and maybe even, like I said, win the region and go on and represent us in the regional the state semifinal.
So my list, I went because I tried to keep one from Taps, and then 5A, 4A, and then a fun one for me here. So JB2 on the girls' side, Church John Paul II. Um, if you look at their historical history, they are one of the elite teams in Taps, especially for girls soccer. Last year, I'm not saying it was a down year, but it was probably a disappointing year where they lost to the Atonement Catholic Academy in the regional round. I think Geneva ended up winning the district for that year, Geneva School of Bernie. So the gap has closed. So to me, my bullseye is on Church JP2, the Lady Guardians, to see if they can pick it back up. Now, obviously, graduations and what's in the pipeline, matters a lot at the TAPS level. And I don't, a school like JP2 doesn't necessarily rebuild; they just reload. So was last year kind of that reload year where this year they'll go back to the top here. But to me, as far as for the TAPS girls, they are one that I think for a San Antonio side to kind of put a bullseye on to see how they can do for the TAPS season so far.
Yeah, JP2, like I said, have been kind of the story program for the girls' side on the TAPS. Um, Last year they had some diverse some difficulty. Getting Atonement just kind of snuck on everybody, and that's just
And
and
they
for
got
them,
past Geneva too,
yeah,
so
yeah.
let's
There's
not
mhm.
sleep on Atonement.
Yeah, that was their second year playing in winter soccer for TAPS. Because previously they used to play in the fall, or like early fall. But you know, how do they bounce back? This year, I'm sure they will. But it's a 3-team race in that district. If you notice how the boys district's a lot different from the girls
Well,
district. Yeah, it's
the
it's
boys is
more.
all
Yeah,
Taps messed it up.
yeah,
We said it at the time. Taps messed it up. When I went to their standings page, there's 3 teams in with with 1 and 5 in the other, as opposed to I think the girls has 9 teams
yeah.
stacked into it. But that's a whole separate discussion.
Yeah, so that, like I said, it's a competitive district, but like I said, we've had someone represent that district go to the state finals. Either win the state
Mhm.
championship or be a finalist. So, and I'm sure we're probably going to see that again this year.
So the other one is Canyon High School. And the big reason, like my second one with Jay, was because my son. This one is friend of the show, Coach Kano, from the 50-50 moved from MacArthur to Canyon. So I'm putting the bullseye on you, Coach Kano. You're moving up. Canyon has some history. MacArthur, you did well at MacArthur. You did well at St. Mary's Hall. I believe you did very well over
Sleta,
in El Paso. I don't remember the school.
Sleta.
Uh, let's see if you can do it here in Canyon. You talk a big game, in our little chats. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm putting the bullseye on you for that here. But no, just in all good fun here. Like I said here, hope Coach Kano and the Canyon Cougarettes have a successful season and along those lines here. But to me, the reason why I have them is Coach Kano on here, just to kind of mess with him a little bit here. But your thoughts on Canyon or anything about Coach Kano and and the 50-50 pod, I guess would be a good opportunity to promote that.
Yeah, and I've had to discuss, some discussions with him on this, like, talked about, because I've asked him about how the season looks and so forth. I'll probably get in touch with him again this week, and I'm sure I think I'm going to go see him play next week as well too. Though, believe it or not, before he kind of took over the team, they the Canyon girls really, they they made a run last year.
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize that they made a good run last year. Um, like I said, this year I think the expectations are high. I think um, I don't want to give away too much, but um, the they lost to Leander Rouse to last year. They lost to I believe it was Round Rock Westwood, who ended up losing to Vandergrift, who ended up winning state. Um, I think they have a great opportunity to win that game, that third round game. Like I said, they're going to be well coached. I think this team's very hungry, and I've seen their non-district schedule. They're going to be very prepared, and they're
Mm-hmm.
playing some high caliber teams. And they're playing. I remember seeing them playing against Georgetown, Timber Creek. So they're not for him to. He's really challenging the girls, to prepare for that run, and I think they have a good chance to go, get maybe past that third round. And so, like I said, just expecting good things there. Canyon's in good hands with them, and then, like I said, they're going to do a lot of. He's going to do a lot of great things, like what he did in MacArthur. He really built that program there in MacArthur. Great job with the ladies over there.
Building the foundation aspects
Build
of it, yeah.
Yeah, and really they bought into the system of play that he did, and I'm sure here the Canyon Lady Cougars are going to do the same thing too. So, so expecting some good things, and like I said, they're going to be a team to watch this year.
Bullseye's on your back, Coach.
Just like
So,
Liverpool.
let's see if you was it draw Madrid or Real Madrid. You got that pressure every game, coach. Let's see if you can. Was it Coach? What's the one with the cigar? Carlos. He's Brazil now. Was it
Ancelotti.
Ancelotti?
Yeah.
We'll see if Coach Cano can live up to that pressure. The next one that I have is Piper, and this is another one where he did kind of more of the district, and really this is kind of a theme for here. Is can Piper and District 26 get past District 25 Austin teams? And I know you've hinted at it at the 6A level. We've talked about it at the 4A level, the 5A level, the 6A level. But I think, especially on the girls' side, it's a little bit more clear where the Austin girls, especially last year, had San Antonio's number.
Yeah, minus Smithson Valley. Yeah, minus Smithson Valley girls.
I think the year before, I think it was a little bit
They got
reversed or a little
swept.
bit
Yeah.
closer.
Last year they got swept.
Yeah. So to me, like I said here, for Piper, like I said here, because they are a quality team, and I think they were the first place team in the district last year. And that district is so tough. But they face the other toughest division. I think you and Coach Cano both have talked about it between 26 and 25. And I know there's some up in the Dallas Fort Worth area that are extremely tough as well. But probably pound for pound, one of the toughest districts in there. So to me, kind of a theme here. I know I singled out Piper, but really for the D26 level and really San Antonio, can we get past Austin teams this year?
I think whoever wins between for the girls' side, for whoever wins between the playoff game between 25 5A and 26 5A, that's probably going to be the team that's going to represent one of those teams going to represent is going to win the region. Is probably going to represent, like I said, is going to win the region and maybe have a legitimate shot going to the state title. And you saw that what Cedar Park did last year.
Mm-hmm.
They went up there. They knocked off Frisco Wakeland, which Frisco Wakeland
nobody had that.
That nobody, El Cucuy, they took them to the woodshed. And I'm saying that as far as like early on, like I say, even though Frisco came back and made all kind of fell a little short on the comeback, but early on they took them.
Well, it was a 3-1 win for Cedar Park in the final.
Yeah, like I said, they took them really by surprise. Again, like I said, they went in with no fear, and that's the thing when these two districts face each other, and like I said, Smithson Valley was able to get over that hump and make their run. How did the other teams respond? Like with Piper, with maybe New Braunfels, Burton, the Bernie Lady Greyhounds, they had a great season last year too. No one kind of expected them, and then you also have, like I said, the champion girls. So that you have 6 teams there. It's a very deep district. That it's like I said, it's a playoff game this year, and then it makes that first round game even more. It's top heavy and so forth. So hopefully, like I said, maybe 26 5A gets the best of it. Maybe this year they get to sweep 25 5A, and then we will have maybe 2 representatives go to the represent us for Region 4, maybe into the and like I said, like we've had some teams to make the win state championships in the same district, and this is a district that could probably possibly do that.
The next team you've already kind of hinted. I had Wimberley, who lost in PKs to Randall at the D2 level for state. Can they come back and finish the job? They're in an extremely tough district in 4A, but I believe, if memory serves me right, they will be in Division 2, the playoffs there, just because with the size there. Do they bring enough back, and can they withstand the pressure of making it to the final? And I think they lost in PKs close. I think it was it was one where through there, but can they get over the hump? Because district wise, they're tested.
Yeah.
Preseason wise, generally they if you're playing in the Austin area, San Antonio area, but especially in Austin area, you're going to get tested very well, in the early showcases here.
Yeah, they have a showcase. Yeah, they have their own showcase.
So to me, like I said here, it's not like you used to get on Southwest, and even a little bit this year, you would have liked to seen them go up to what the North Dallas tournament
Yeah,
earlier
North
this
Texas Elite, yeah,
or North Texas
or
Elite
even that,
tournament here.
or even that Allen Showcase, yeah.
So, but with Wimberley, they are playing tough talent to prepare for the playoffs. To me, the question is, can they finish the job in 4A?
Yeah, Wimberley, like I said, I think that the thing with them is like how do they do as far as the recruit performance from last year. Like I said, they had a great run. They just lost 7-6 in a shootout to a really good Canyon Randall team, and uh, this year I think you said depending what they lost in graduation, they're probably going to be the favorite again, especially now in that D2 bracket. And if you looked at the D2 bracket, they really weren't challenged at all. And even the team, even the team that we thought they probably would challenge it, which was Corpus Christi London, they had no problem, taking care of business. And even in the state semifinal, they beat a really good El Campo team. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so
4-0, yeah.
so they're like I said, it's all going to depend. Like I said, district title wise, they're going to be in the dogfight with Canyon Lake. And now here's the thing with Canyon Lake, they were also in the Division 2 playoff, and they lost to that London team. So could we see Wimberley versus Canyon Lake in a regional final? And out of those two, that could be one of your favorite, the favorites to go on to maybe the state, the kind of the state title game. And for sure, like I said, they get to avoid playing Salina in the finals, so being in the D2. I think that's going to come down to one of those two who, is this year Cannon Lake's tier team? Are they loaded now? Are they going to surpass Wimberley? We'll see. But like I said, district wise, it's a 3-team dogfight. But I think Wimberley will make another deep run, and I wouldn't be surprised we see a Canyon Lake versus Wimberley regional final this year.
Yeah, and you talk about the run Wimberley had. They beat Lago Vista 5-0. Their closest match prior to the state championship final was Wimberley versus Pleasanton, which was a 4-1, so that 3-goal difference. They beat was it Rockport Fulton 9-0 in the regional semis.
Semis, yeah.
Regional semis, and then even in the regional finals, they beat that London team 6-0, and then El Campo 4-0. So, just the run they had last year, and I know they came up short in PKs, flip of a coin. Like I said, one of those historical runs for that here. And speaking of historical, my 6A team's Medina Valley. They've done very well in the district. However, reason why I'm putting it this year here is with the new high school coming. And I know you know the name of it, but I didn't research the name of it. I should have. But they will be opening up a new school in Medina Valley. Next realignment, the rumor is they may be dropping. But for this year here, for the girls' side, if because I think 2-3 years in a row they've been pretty competitive.
Yeah, even on 5A, yeah, they knocked off the Southwest girls.
So to me, this is kind of before because whenever a new school comes, they take from the existing school. Maybe not seniors, but
the younger,
some of that foundation for that here. So there typically is an adjustment period for that here, where the school that gets picked from becomes a little bit weaker, just because you lose some of that upcoming pipeline talent. So I put Medina Valley as kind of that bullseye list because like I said here, they are going to have a new school, which will be a new rival and possibly new just a new setup here. But your thoughts on Medina Valley? I wanted to go a little bit outside of the north side, northeast schools, also with the 6A, because we've focused a lot on those. And Medina Valley is in our window that we do focus on quite well as well.
Yeah, last year Medina Valley dominated district, 30, 36A. Really didn't have any problems. Maybe I know they got challenged by Loreto United, that was basically it. They didn't really get challenged by anybody else, not by the Del Rio girls or LBJ or Alexander or Eagle Pass. So they kind of cruised through that district. This year, we'll see. How much does that pipeline, that talent that went to Creekview, how much has that affected them this coming year? And this is going to be their last year in 6A. We're anticipating them to drop down to 5A because we're going to have Creekview and Medina Valley in 5A. We're not sure who's going to be. Are they going to be one D1 or one's going to be one D1, one D2? But this is kind of like the last hurrah for them here in 6A. This should be the favorites again for 36A. I think they'll get challenged by Laredo United. That's probably going to be the key. Those two, the home and away games are going to be the key ones there. Playoffs, like I said, that's going to depend on who they face as far as the matchups in the Valley. Like I say, but also even the first round game, they just got by San Marcos, and here's a thought. If Medina Valley does, like I said, they make the D2, and let's say Del Rio gets ahead of them, we could see Canyon face Medina Valley in the first round. That's a possibility.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
That's a possibility. So, it's like I said, I think that, like I said, they'll probably be the number one seed for Division 2. It's going to depend who that 4 seed's going to be. In that first round game, if they face, like I said, if you look at Coach Cano's district, you got some other good teams. You got Steel, who's always they have a good squad. You also have a really good like I said.
So yeah, Johnson team. Buda Johnson, San Marcos, Clemens. Hold on, I'm trying to.
Yeah, Clemens had a down year last year, but they were very young, and like I said, I got to see them play. The talent is there. It's just a inexperience. So we'll see what they do this year. Like I said, that could be a first round game for Medina Valley. Like I said,
well, let me see here. Hold on. Let me see how's it break down here. So Buda's at 28, Steele's at 27, Canyon's at 24, Judson 25, East Central 35, San Marcos 25, and then Shirts at 26. So yeah, Canyon will be D2, but what they will probably be the winner of especially if since we already put the target on them already. They'll probably be the D1, the D2 number 1 team out of 29, and then
it's probably be either between Clemens and San Marcos. As far as the other D2 representatives.
Yeah, because Johnson and Steele both
they'll be D1 unless one of those two falters, and then that could kind of change. And like I said, we don't know what Buda Johnson has now. I know last year they kind of struggled a little bit. We'll see what they have this coming year.
But even if they finish 4th, because they have second, East Central has the most.
So if East Central makes the playoffs, that can change a lot of things there too.
Historically, East Central hasn't been very good. Maybe this is the year that they do. I've heard a rumor East Central might be opening up another school.
Yeah, they are going to be opening up a second school, so they'll be dropping up to 5A. So yeah, the landscape's going to change pretty soon.
We need to have that discussion. Where maybe on one of your in the shadows, or depending on what we look at, is maybe kind of a Region 4 San Antonio area-ish. How Rafa anticipates the realignment coming. That comes next year, right?
In February. Yep, February.
In February. So maybe over the holiday break.
Things. I know I talked to Steve about it. He's like, yeah, it's going to be very interesting how this landscape is going to shape up. And then I'm hearing rumors that the 5A numbers, the 6A numbers may drop to like a 22-30.
You have to, because 5A is getting too bloated.
And there's too much of a gap. And honestly, they're gonna have to end up. I know 6A is the only one that doesn't have, as far as districts, as a D1 and D2 compared to the other their other teams. And I think eventually they're gonna have to do that. I think for every single sport, have a D1, D2 to have a level playing field and all that. So, but we'll see. We'll see with the UIL. I know they've mentioned about 7A, but I don't know how would they do that. That I think 7A would be more of like a 16 team district, but that gap in 5A,
There's
that's like a
just
thousand.
too.
Yeah, it's a
It
thousand
just
student gap, and they're gonna have to figure something out to kind of fix that.
and and to be honest with you, I think the number of students in 5A is a good healthy student population to be able to control for teachers and the administration. So I could see that 5A kind of being that sweet spot that the suburbs like to keep at, and
Mhm.
that's why to me just there's too many schools that fit into that 5A that 5A bracket. Now the question is how do you balance, because what 2200, right?
Mhm.
Somewhere
It's like
around there.
2270
If you
right
drop
now.
it down to 21 or along those lines, you've got some schools that are 3 and 4,000. So how does that balance out for that here? Because that's really what it all
Mhm.
comes down to is
I think
is the
honestly, like I said,
competitiveness.
yeah, eventually they're gonna have to do like a 6A D1, 6A D2 districts. I think what they do, what they already do for football,
Mm-hmm.
for five, from 1A all the way to 5A, they're gonna have to do the same thing for 6A, and also do that for all the other sports too. I think one of the you're noticing like the reason why we're getting a lot more 5A teams, and if you take a look at Brownsville, all the
Oh, the
Brownsville teams,
idea schools,
the
yeah.
idea schools have been popping up everywhere over there in the valley, especially in Brownsville. It's pulling a lot of those kids on. I actually had a conversation with my uncle because he works at Pace High School, and he said that a lot of he's even anticipating Pace may end up moving down to 4A.
Mm.
He said here they're at the cusp of maybe dropping down another, because they said they're losing a lot of kids to those charter schools. And you notice for this coming realignment, I wouldn't be surprised like Brownsville Hannah, maybe Veterans Memorial for Brownsville, end up dropping down to 5A, and you have all the Brownsville schools in 5A.
You haven't seen it happen yet, but if you look at what's happening in El Paso, you're
Mhm.
starting to see some of their big schools lose. I know here in San Antonio, and it's not just the idea schools. There's the Harmony schools, the science
Jubilee.
and technology, Jubilee schools. They're popping up all over like San Antonio.
Mhm.
Just like if you go 410, 1604, you're gonna see those schools popping up. You're gonna start seeing the north side schools, the northeast schools starting to lose kids to those schools. And to me, from my understanding, is that those schools, at least down in the valley, they play at the 4A level with 200-300 kids for that here. So to me, like I said, I could see the top doing the 6A, but I also could see it, and I think they discussed this at the last meeting, possibly having 3A schools, because you're starting to see a lot more smaller schools out in rural areas, like Gonzales and was it is it Yakum?
Yoakum.
Yoakum, areas like that, the Pleasanton, schools like that are starting to pop up with
Mhm.
programs.
Well, you have
Um,
Luling. Luling's a two
Luling,
A,
yeah.
and I think this year I didn't get a chance to see them play. Hopefully, I get to see them this year. Center Point, which is just north of San Antonio, they're a 2A2, and they just added soccer. I think they played a JV, kind of like an independent.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're trying to do a 3A soccer. I think they have to have at least, from one of the discussions we had in 50/50, I think they have to have at least more than 100 teams in order
Mm-hmm.
to make that into a reality. And a lot has to do because a lot of the charter schools are starting to now to play into UIL. We haven't had that issue here in San Antonio, but I think
Not
eventually
yet, but it's
not yet,
coming
it's probably going to be coming soon. And
because there's money involved, right?
mhm.
Being able to charge for people to come to your games. Um, uh, you
But
know,
also the popular student population is they want to compete against other schools.
right.
I know some of the charter schools have their own little, they have their own districts and so for competition. but eventually a lot of them do. Like I had a discussion with a friend of mine that teaches at one of the charter schools, and he's a college counselor there, and he's mentioned that there's a possibility they may be trying to get into UIL. They may start as a 3A stuff and so forth, and and that's all it has to do with the schools wanting to compete. I think because they don't have a lot of opportunities to complain against those charter schools, districts, or leagues. They want to compete against some of these, the UIL. That's where they want to be at.
Yeah, and Scholes mentions you'll lose students, but not actual players, just student athletes
Mm-hmm.
along those lines. But to me, it's one of those things to where, number one, if your account goes, if you're, because I went to a small school, my entire school had 200 kids in it, from freshman to senior. Is It's just you don't have that. You're going to have your athletes, but then you'd have individuals like me that I enjoyed playing sports, but I was nowhere, you know, a top athlete or anything along those. Like my son blows me away with just how he plays soccer and along those lines. I was never that type of athlete. For that here, now I didn't play soccer either. To be fair, for that here, so. But to me, if you have less kids to choose from, that's less depth, and then that's where because that's where you kind of find those missing gems, for that here, that maybe not very athletic on the surface, but end up being somewhat athletic, that can make a difference, and help a team out through the season,
Yeah.
for that here. So
And if you look at, like, especially like the 4A districts, you have some districts that have a bunch of teams, like 10 teams. Eventually, I think with like I said, even like District 25, which is the Austin 4A district with the Austin Achieve and Northeast, uh, you have teams like Gerald, Lago Vista. Now you have the Liberty Hills newest school, Legacy Ranch, and you have Florence. Those are small, and then that Georgetown. You have those smaller kind of 3A schools putting soccer programs, and then you have New Braunfels, Long Creek too. They're coming in, so eventually they're gonna have to, you know, kind of even things out. Have to do the D1, D2 route like what they do in football, and that's to kind of combat that. But also, like I said, student population wise, and like I said, some of these are affecting some of these schools. And like I said, I know like in Brownsville, it's really affected them. And
well, there's no 6A schools.
yeah,
From my understanding from the reports, is there's no 6A schools down in the Brownsville
well,
area.
currently, right now it's Hannah and Brendan's Memorial. Those are the only two left, but
when the new realignment comes
there's
out,
a possibility
there's
both
a
of them may drop.
possibility of no 6A schools
Mhm.
down there, which then when you're talking about having to realign and reclassify for the playoffs, that's going to make a huge difference. Between Region 3 and Region 4, you're going to see some movement of districts that may have been one or the other. But if you're losing the Brownsville area districts or the Valley districts because they're all dropping down,
Mhm.
to me that's a huge thing to do. Now, the other difference is we've talked about this. Northside could use another 1-2 schools with the population. I think the Northeast schools are I guess it's more Como County schools now,
Mhm.
because I think that's where more of that growth is growing on north of San Antonio. I think that's more Como County.
Yeah.
Comal County. So that's where this is kind of going into is, uh, like the schools like Jay, Holmes, Stevens, they're getting a little bit smaller because people are moving out more to the suburbs, more along those lines here, to where it'll be interesting to see how these numbers
Yeah.
time out.
So here's the crazy thing: if you look at the district alignments for 5A, the Valley has 3 5A districts, and they all have 9, 10 team districts. You have those two drop down.
Where you put
Where you're putting them, and
or
now
where you putting the Del Rio schools, or
yeah, and then, like I've heard rumors like from my old alma mater, they may get shipped out west because of Friendship dropping down to 5A with their new school. They may end up getting placed with Odessa, Permian, Midland High, Midland Lee, and San Angelo Central, and that's gonna be that's an 8-hour round trip for games. That's a possibility. And like I said, even West Texas has felt the the crunch, because even I think when we talk to you know to or the rep the guy that covers the for the Panhandle, a lot of Lubbock and Amarillo, they used to have 6A teams. Now they're all dropping down to 5A. And it's caused a
The
vacuum there.
yellow,
Yellow City Soccer. They mentioned to me that a lot of the population is going down because there are buildings starting to build kind of new schools, like West Plains is the third school in Canyon. So it's caused like the former Little Southwest Conference. It's hard to find a six school because you look at the Abilene schools too; they're both 5A. And do the realignment look into it? Because the closest 6A for that they're on I-20 is Weatherford. So I don't know if they're going to put Weatherford to go all the way to Odessa or Midland to be in the district and to go to San Angelo. Some weird things have happened, so we'll see. Unless they were willing to send some of those Texas teams to go to El Paso, which I doubt. So UIL has a lot on their hands and so forth. And I know we've seen some of the some of the mock realignments and so forth. They're very creative and so forth. Yeah, and like I said, they have a real
good fodder.
yeah, good. It's a lot of them are. It could make sense too, and it's like I said, we'll see how it turns out on February.
Well, Rafa, we're at 90 minutes. Like I said, I know you're up in
Waco, past Royce time.
We're way past Roy's time, but that's what we typically do here for that here. But any final thoughts that you got? We're going to try coming back weekly-ish for this here. Maybe for December might not quite be weekly-ish, with the holidays coming up and depending on Rafa's travel and stuff like that here. But January 1st actually there's some games at the end of December.
December 29th is the official first day
for the here. I know Northside on January 1st, which to me just blows my mind how UIL's playing on New Year's Day, but it's a thing. But
they can literally push back a week if they wanted to. I mean, that's I think,
or start it a week earlier.
Yeah.
I think the only reason why they don't do it is because of football, right?
Yeah. Because the facilities. I think they can push it back a week, so that way it doesn't, like I said, because you can have a gap week during that holiday and then get back to playing. But I guess they want to finish everything off by early April and so forth. But my final thoughts, like I said before, finishing off, like I said, just want to wish a happy birthday to our buddy Matt, one of our FTC co-founders. Happy birthday! Hope you're having fun. Be safe. Enjoy the Jaeger shots, and like I said, it was.
Hey, where was my invite, man?
He has my invite too, though. So we're gonna have to get him.
Where was my invite? Instead we had Warden Rafa saying, "Hey, no, we're doing a show."
So we're gonna have to make that up on Friday or Saturday. So we're gonna have to round him up, take him somewhere. But yeah, happy birthday to him, and then like I said, just looking forward. Like I said, this is day 2. Of the start of the season. It's for tryouts, because I mentioned like in 50-50, like I said, for the players, work hard, do what you need to do. If you really want to be in varsity, prove, show your coaches what you can do and so forth. And even if you don't get in, don't worry. Hey, if you can get on the JV team, build upon that. That'll motivate yourself. Like I said, even if you're a younger player for a freshman, sophomore, it's not the end of the world. As long as you can get on one of the squads, then you can build upon that, and then next week, like I said, next Friday we'll have some scrimmages. I know we'll be out there for scrimmage, probably, and I'll be out another one on Saturday too, and then we'll probably have another little surprise list, and then the often imitated, never duplicated power rankings, the RPIs.
Hopefully that usually doesn't come out till mid-January, usually a couple weeks in, because unlike the college football rankings where you rank way too early, Rafa is one where he wants to see at least a couple weeks of action just to kind of see how teams really look.
And they were trying to throw shade on my Notre Dame and all that because we lost to the U, but you saw they lost to 2 weak opponents, and my team's won 10 in a row, so they're in the playoff against the Aggies right now. So It's
And
not
yes,
what it's not.
kudos to Rafa on his connection. We can finally hear you all the way through.
Yeah, I got a new little headset. I'm at a Holiday Inn. I got some good internet, so I got a little new headset here for that I can travel, so that sounds a lot better. So hopefully everything's fine and all that. But like I said, I think it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And like I said, rankings they're nice, but for me personally, it's the one who's holding the trophy. That's what matters, And
Well, we do a podcast. We create content, so I like having those. But I think with what we've kind of built up at the Bullseye List, which I would like to do, as we mentioned here, maybe
Mhm.
not quite as detailed as we did this one here, but maybe a game or
We'll do bullseye games for games and other
bullseye
things.
games, players maybe along
Mhm.
those lines here. My final thought, though, number one, um, players, make sure you're focusing in the classroom because as we saw
Mhm.
last year, there was a state finalist or state playoff game that was impacted by academics for that here. So make sure that you are, and I get on AJ about it and he gets upset at me, but make sure your grades are up, doing the work in the classroom, doing the work in the community, doing the work on the field. And that, because like I said here, I graduated in 91, so that's too many years ago. But that foundation that, the high school coaches helped develop me with, being part of a team, being part of that responsibility to the team of keeping my grades up and stuff like that stays with you no matter what job career wise that you do. So number one, stay focused both on and off the field. Number two, referees, if you have the ability to or have the desire to, like I said here, look at becoming a referee. I know there's referee shortages. I know there's new rules in speaking with Coach Poor, with John Jay, that referees will be, they'll probably still be flexible, especially early. But if you do cross lines, you could impact the team and the school, which there is nothing worse than that. And then if you do get kicked out, not only do you get kicked out from the game, but you could get kicked out from being able to return back the rest of the year, is my understanding on the new rules for that year. So, as a parent that sometimes likes to chirp a little bit, uh, it's not like at SAFC, Toyota Field, where there's 6,000 other fans that drown out with what you're saying a lot of times. So be careful what you say because your voice does carry in those stadiums along those lines. Plus, as an adult, we want to set a good example for our children and the children in the community for that, even though they may say rougher things than we do nowadays.
unless you're junior, like I said, they're for our section and stuff.
Oh man, but yeah, just like, but from my understanding, with because I went to the J meeting with Coach Poor, he did mention that the referees not only will be focusing more on what the players have said, and I've seen this in club action for that here, but also in high schools where it's becoming a little bit more focused on that here. We had 6K at Toyota Field. I think that's probably the average for
Mhm.
Toyota Field, 5,500 6K, even in a down year, is through there here. Typically, a good year you'll get closer to 7 and above that, but yeah, typically 55-6 is typically the bottom for San Antonio. And even if you go back to the Scorpion years, 5 to 5,500, even in the last year when they were just a horrible year along those
We'll
lines.
see. We'll see about the big surprise tomorrow.
Yeah. So well,
Hopefully, he's sign some players. We're already following
well,
all that.
hopefully, well, I don't care if they sign. I just want to know who's returning and who's not returning, because that's the bare minimum of what San Antonio FC should be putting out. It's what other teams have done. Tampa's already loading up. They got
Yeah.
Cicerone, they got Archer. Sacramento's blowing things up. Um, Tulsa's re-signing players from their championship team. Um, there is still the players union and
CBA.
the USL HQ that needs to get their act together and work together to that way there's not a lockout or a strike or whichever side is going to pull the trigger on that. But no, like I said here, for San Antonio FC, I know they got their big friendly March,
March against
mid March
the German
against
D2 team.
through there here. I know historically, end of December, January is when you'll see the schedule come out for USL. So, and I think the calendar year the league ended through here, but I think the CBA technically expires at the end of the year. So that'll be the next big thing here. But thank you for everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, Chulo074. We will try to be a little bit more consistent on this, maybe get a little bit more notification, kind of set this up here. I'll get the Twitter to go back on for the SA Soccer Roundtable for that here, because I think that was on a different card that ended up changing due to a fraud situation, and I think I missed that because it didn't load up here.
But year 7, year 7.
Year 7, almost year 8.
I think that we're already over the 300 episodes already.
Oh yeah, we went well over 300 now.
Well, I guess we're shooting for the 350. I guess.
It was right at the end of the year. We were kind of 50-50 on, hey, are we going to have a show, because nobody really had anything positive to say. And so just I've thought about maybe seeing if around the holidays, maybe getting together at one of the local pubs here and just kind of. I know we typically do that, not recording anything, but typically try to. I think it's been
like end of the year.
Right, Christmas party. I think we've had one. I think we watched the Vikings games. Roberts.
Why do we watch the Vikings?
I don't know, but the Broncos are 10-2, so that's all I know.
Hey, my Cowboys are going to run the table.
The Cowboys did what the Broncos did by beating the Eagles and
the Chiefs.
The Chiefs. So the Broncos have already
sorry, Matt.
And they beat the Cowboys. I'm not sorry to Matt. Matt, likes Taft. Matt likes South San. It's his birthday, so I won't get on him too hard.
Well, speaking of Matt, he mentioned about so FTC is also holding a little watch party for the World Cup draw next Friday. So
this Friday.
This Friday. This Friday.
This Friday on the 5th. Yeah, it's at some hamburger place in Helotes.
In Helotes, yeah.
I haven't actually heard where it's at yet. I need to reach out to him.
So let me have the details here. So if you want to do the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw with FTC, it's going to be at Twin Brothers Burgers at 11 a.m. at 13247 Bandera Road. They're in Helotes, so FTC will be there. The Copatejas won't be there because I have possession of that. And also speaking of Copatejas, you probably make some appearances at some of the high school games. So you like to take a picture with the Copatejas. You may see an appearance here. I might bring it along with me here and there. So, but yeah, if you want to do the World Cup draw, like I said, FTC 210 Alliance. This Friday, 11 a.m. World Cup draw. Hopefully, Mexico gets a good draw. Hopefully, we don't get the group of death.
So between Canada, U.S., and Mexico, who do you think gets the group of death?
I think the U.S. does.
I think Canada does.
I think the U.S. ends up with Colombia and Switzerland. And maybe Italy. if the Italians make it. Let's see if they qualify too.
Italy has a problem on qualifying. But yeah, the address for the Twin Bros Burgers is at 13247 Bandera Road. They do open at 11 a.m., so we'll be there they'll be there when it opens. If you go to Twin Bros Burgers with a Z instead of an S.com, you can get a look at the menu and what they do offer here for that here. So if you are on the far west side, northwest side of town, going to Bandera Road, probably not too bad that early through there here. We gotta get it together with a live show.
We have to ask them this if we can do a live show there. So, like I said, like an end of the year show.
They're a Liverpool. I think I saw they're a Liverpool.
I don't have an EPL team, so
All right. Well, we went 15 minutes longer with final thoughts here. So, but what's life without goals?
Mhm.
We are out, and hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving.